Exhaust is the fifth full-length album from Pyrrhon. This is a New York City-based band, and they are generally thought of as a technical death metal band, maybe a progressive death metal band if you'd like to categorize them that way. And they do come from a certain pedigree. They did start out with a fellow who was also the drummer for Imperial Triumphant at the time, and there's certainly a lot of technique built into everything that they do. These were college kids to start. Their brains were kind of on fire learning, and they were making music that was crazy for its time. And I think if you go through their discography, it's much more than like a Gorguts clone, like a lot of people said early on. There's more to just than just technical death metal and the dissonant abstraction of it in their work. As we find later on, there's noise rock, there's mathcore, there's different kind of things that bands like Flourishing were doing at the time that a lot of bands kind of gave up on. These guys were one of the only ones to continue to push that, and it was their second LP, The Mother of Virtues, that convinced me that this was a band that was something special. You know, a lot of bands at the time were blurring a lot of really great barriers at the time, like Aranzi Pazuzu was touching upon space rock and progressive rock and things like that. And Pyrrhon were the one band where I was thinking, this is going to be the group that is going to merge technical death metal, mathcore, and noise rock in a way that is tasteful or insane or something new. And I think I developed a taste for that beyond records like Reveal's Fly Strips, where that was kind of a noise rock record essentially, but it was also a death thrash metal band. And so there was a thought of what this band would become. It's been there for a long time, and I would say they probably achieved something close to what I'd wanted with Abscess Time back in 2020. They kind of went there with it, but it was still definitely a technical death metal record. You could feel the influences were spawning from a lot of different places, and you could feel they were wanting to expand that sound, but it needed to fit in. It needed to fit what their whole idea of the band was and stay consistent. So they were having an identity crisis during the pandemic, and the result was, let's come together and have a powwow and try to make a record that we want to and not a record that we're expected to. So let's cut to a song and get to what that entailed. I view Pyrrhon as almost like a diarized reaction to the world around them and the way that they're processing it. And so there's definitely this like kind of converge core craziness to a lot of the way that they greet you on this record. The metallic hardcore, mathcore, and noise rock feeling of a lot of their chord choices, a lot of the meter that they infuse into these songs is not outrageous for technical death metal today, but the rate at which they fire off these things and the way that they connect the pieces on the first several songs in this record are pretty insane. I think stepping into this record is almost like a noxious cloud of just stress and anxiety releasing, and it takes a little bit of time for them to really get into the pocket. But the actual volley of riffs that starts off this record and the way that they connect all of it together it's just nuts, and one of the most exciting openings to a record that I've heard this year. And it begs the question, is this technical death metal anymore? It does touch upon math rock and noise rock a little bit more often. It isn't the juddering rhythms of mathcore. It isn't necessarily the stark anxietous throb of noise rock, but those are important parts of what this record is. It is certainly an extreme metal band approaching those ideas and using that as an emotional point of expression while they pull off a lot of very impressive techniques here. The thing to note here for my taste is that they're not exactly being typical in terms of the progressivisms and the use of unique structures. I think there's a lot of John Zorn influence in a lot of both New York abstract metal, and I think that that's really well done in a lot of bands. I think that, like I said, Imperial Triumphant do it probably best. There's a lot of groups that are really hitting upon that nail, and I was glad to see that this sprawled out and became a little bit more technicolor. They were pushing for a lot of different things that they maybe there are very few bands out there doing things like this. I think if you're a fan of like Theophanos and his most recent record, you'll kind of get why this is also exciting in a similar way. They're kind of going for those chunkier rhythms. They're moving in at a different pace, and it really comes together both as a blur and of a great focus. And what they have to say is actually very astute. This has always been kind of of a socio-politically driven band in terms of the observations they make. They're looking at the system as a whole and the social system, the structure of human civilization and whatnot. And I think that really matches well with the sound of their music. It makes for a very exciting listen. It makes for something that feels like it's a reaction to right now that's easily can be used as catharsis and battery building kind of music. It's what I consider brain blurring entertainment. It is so exciting and abrupt at the first time you encounter it that thrill lasts quite a long time, and by the time you do get it down note by note and kind of know what you're listening to, the depth arrives along with it. That's not always guaranteed with this type of record, but in this case they really do pull it off. And for me, it's a high recommendation because they pull it off that well. They really do make their point, and it might be scatterbrained in the way that it reveals itself to start, but overall, this feels like a very strong point of growth for the band. It feels like an important record for the band, and one of the more impressive showings we've heard this year. That really does feel extreme. It doesn't just feel like another exercise in the sound of Pyrrhon. It sounds like they really push themselves to really get these things out as they are emerging, and do so with a natural sort of flair that comes with jamming together, working together, and getting that fire back. So I think they've succeeded in that sense, and it's been entertaining to me. So a recommendation for me, go ahead and check that one out. It released on September 6th, and read my review for more of my thoughts.